please receive now the Directorate General for Communications Network, Content and Technology at DG Connecting European Commission's Philipe Lefebvre.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I have a few slides, but I can easily start without slides. But okay, that's fine. Thank you. Dear State Secretary, dear representative of governments, dear industry delegates, colleagues and friends, it's my pleasure to give very few words from Europe at this opening. This is the first year we can say 5G is not a research project anymore. The first commercial products and services are at our doorstep. So actually, we already have networks which have open commercial services. We all know about Verizon, but in Europe we have one small one that has started, Elisa in Finland, with the first 5G call, but they offer actually commercial service. We expect that the World Radio Conference next year and the IMT 2020 designations will really be the beginning of the mass deployment of 5G into 2020 and beyond. And because market players then will feel comfortable switching to, okay, thank you. We think that the events next year, the World Radio Conference and the IMT 2020 will really be the beginning of the mass deployment of 5G. But actually it will be more the beginning of a journey, a decade of innovation in vertical industries and so on, rather than the end of a project. Europe is in full speed now with trials and tests. To our count, there are more than 140 trials going on. I've been asked to be a bit honest. Maybe it's between 100 and 140. We are trying now to find the right classification to reflect really the intensity. But what is interesting is that more than half of these trials are not about traditional mobile broadband, but about experimentation or trials in vertical industries. That's something new. And it includes also 5G corridors along highways for connected cars. Not only we as European Commission have supported industry with 100 million, that will be 130 million after the next call, to equip highways with advanced pre-5G and 5G solutions. But we will also, we have proposed to invest €1 billion for helping the commercial rollout of these systems in 21-22, so at the beginning of the next decade. You can find more details on the website, which is the European 5G Observatory. The web address will be mentioned at the end of the presentation. If we compare, sorry, it doesn't matter, it seems that it doesn't react. As far as regulation is concerned, we are quite satisfied. It seems that in Europe for the first time, sorry? Okay, no, it goes too fast. As far as regulations is concerned, we are quite satisfied with the progress with our member states. As you know, the Commission is only, if I may say so, the federal level, because you have 28 member states which are in charge of regulation, and what we do at European level is to coordinate regulation. But for the first time, maybe since the GSM time, and even there it was not completely the same, we expect that a new generation of communication will be rolled out at the same time in all 28 member states, at least launched at the same time, which means that all governments will have done their homework and readied their regulation for the rollout of 5G at the same time. But national plans go beyond regulations. We have a mechanism whereby we encourage member states to have more comprehensive plans, which includes investments and also support for 5G application in the public domain, like for public safety, broadband services and so on. So that's also something that we haven't done before, And we see also lots of innovation in terms of regulation. For example, if you look at the recent German auctions that have been announced, there are novelties, for example, in terms of obligation of coverage along highways in line with our EU policy. So we go beyond simple household coverage for the first time. In the German auction also 100 megahertz of the 3.5 gigahertz band will be dedicated for local use, for vertical applications. So allowing to develop new business models because it would not go through expensive auctions for this 100 megahertz. So there's lots of novelties there too at the level of governments. Turning to market developments now, what is encouraging is that we see that the largest operators in Europe have all announced intentions or plans to launch before the end of 2020. Some of them, like if you look at Deutsche Telekom, have put figures on their investment. They say they will invest 20 billion euro on a yearly, on a yearly basis between now, 20 billion euro, yes, I say well, between now and 2021 to launch 5G. But we have still our biggest challenge in Europe is still investment. If you look at, for example, the capital expenditure in the US and in Europe, in the US it's at the moment 194, so close to 200 euro a year, while in Europe it's still 92. So we have a big gap in capital investment. Overall, we think that 160 billion is the gap that we have to fill up. So 160 billion between now and 2025 will have to be invested in addition to what our operators invest on an historical basis. Finishing and turning to the global cooperation, I have to say that at this stage we believe that the global cooperation between regions that started in 2014 has been a success story. We are satisfied with the unprecedented alignment between regions in terms of time frames and unicity of the standard. That was not a given that we would have one single standard at the beginning due to the diversity of users, and it seems that we are going to achieve that. In particular, the global cooperation between new industry in different regions has been very helpful for us as government representatives to create also a sufficient level of consensus between governments and on spectrum and so on. So it's a very efficient way to build consensus before we go and fight in the standards bodies and in the ITU. Let me also use this prestigious setup to convey the Commission services gratitude to the industry and academics working in the 5G PPP in Europe. We believe that overall the 5G PPP has delivered on the research results, and now they are working very intensely on the trials. And we have big ambitions to support you beyond 2020. And let me turn to the last point. What about 6G? We see that there are already a few 6G prophets. Some are in this room, I believe. Is it time to already think of the next, in this spirit of building consensus very early on the next development? Probably it's too early to think beyond 2025, 2030 in 6G, but if something has to be done, I think for the next generation is to ensure a better cooperation within the vertical industries and between vertical industries and the telecom. But the main thing is that the vertical industries, when they work with telecom, they will still work on a regional basis. Automotive is a typical case where we have each our dialogue separately. Although the communication industry is global, this industry, when we talk digital, are not yet talking global. And that's something that maybe we should reflect in the next phase. But we would recommend that we start from this forum for the next generation, if when we start and when we start to work on this, whether we start from this very good forum and very good basis. So let me finish by thanking our Brazilian host and welcoming you next year to Valencia in Spain, in Europe, for the then 7th 5G global event. Thank you.